Yeah. Anyways.
It's all good. Yeah. Let's jump right in then.
Yeah. Go for
Yes. How you doing, man?
it. I'm good, man.
Yeah?
I'm good. I just ate an apple. I'm satisfied right now.
You know what they say about apples, right?
No.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away.
What?
You never heard that before?
Never heard of that, bro.
Dang.
Come on. I'm learning all these things.
I just taught you something.
Yes.
I feel good.
Learn a new thing here in the United States.
Yeah.
Yep. Never
good.
heard this before.
Well, welcome to the Soul Tapes podcast.
Yep.
We're just going to go ahead and jump into this conversation. We want to talk today about disconnecting from the noise.
Which is a very interesting topic.
Yes.
We live in Southern California. So that's a very, very hard thing to do.
Yes.
You know?
So my question is for you, when you think of disconnecting from the noise, what comes to mind? What's the noise in your daily life, or what do you think about?
I mean, we can talk about different levels of noise, I suppose.
Yeah.
I feel like the noise of the responsibilities that I have, the things that I have to accomplish, the responsibilities that I have from work to like constantly moving from one place to another. I have 2 jobs, so I go to work at one place and come back, and then I go to work another place. And I mean, just the dynamic of that, it's just a constantly movement, which I'm in constantly connecting with people, talking with people, plus I think plus just the environments where we at, even at before I go to bed, before I go to bed, I'm like listening to something, washing the dishes, I'm listening to a podcast, or if I'm, whatever it is, I'm in I don't feel sometimes that I don't let my brain rest from noise. Yeah. Just in general.
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you?
Oh yeah. No, that's exactly, I can relate to that completely, because I do the same thing, especially pre-COVID. When I would be in my office, especially summertime. So, because I work at a university, so there's no students there usually. So I could go working all day and have my headphones in, listening to podcasts, listen to music, or anything, and then it's the same thing. Go, leave, and constantly being plugged in. I actually had a moment where I realized, I was like, wow, like I don't allow myself time to think or process. And I think sometimes, I know for me personally, could even use that as like a way to kind of escape like my own feelings and my own like, emotions. So, those are the things that I realized, that being constantly connected to, whether it's just listening to something, that's kind of like one aspect of it, right?
Yeah, of course.
From not disconnecting is just constantly consuming. And the thing is, one thing we don't realize is that when we're constantly consuming content, depending on the type of content we're consuming, actually can affect us in a certain way.
Completely.
So I know growing up, like, being super into hip hop music, like growing up in high school, listening to like the dirtiest songs or listening to like really explicit music, like had an effect on me. Like I could feel sometimes that wasn't what my soul needed at times. So those are like some of the things that I've realized, for myself.
You said something very interesting, because it's true. I don't think we understand the importance of the things that we allow into our head, into our hearts, into our minds, because those things tend to shape who we are, right?
Yeah.
Whatever podcast, whatever shows, whatever Netflix, whatever that we actually listen to, or we allow to, or we consume, like you said, those things shape us.
Yeah.
So, like, I have the same issue. A couple months ago, pre-COVID, I went back, like I go to counseling, and one of the conversations that I had with my counselor was that I needed to take a break for a whole week. I needed to disconnect from everything, kind of leave LA.
Wow.
Go to like the mountains.
A week? That's a long time.
It is a long time. So go to like far away and disconnect from social media, not even having my phone, and just have a whole week, So I remember, and she gave me some homework to do, like when I was over there far away, and I thought that sounds great. Maybe in the future I'll do that, and I never did.
Oh wow.
I never did, because I mean it's hard. You know, it's hard to slow down. And I was coming into a project that would require my whole energy in that time.
Yeah.
So I couldn't just disconnect for the sake of disconnecting, because I needed it to be invested in where I was at.
Yeah.
Which is an excuse too.
Yeah.
So I remember that was one of the things that she told me, and I remember I was like, man, this was. And then now in COVID, I remember I forced myself. I was forced to actually do it, and now I'm so grateful for that. But the thing is that, I mean, we're consuming constantly the whole day from our work. We bring our work home, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We no longer have to take it somewhere else.
Yeah.
We don't know what is the point of. We don't know how to separate from one from the other, plus what we consume at home, plus everything else, right? I think that those things tend to shape, and no wonder why we feel so anxious constantly.
Yeah.
We feel so anxious. We feel that our heart, our soul is not resting properly. We don't feel our body is resting properly, because we're constant. I go to sleep with a podcast.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know how to go to sleep sometimes without noise. Because that's the way I go to sleep.
That's really interesting. So my wife, she's out of town right now, and going to bed at night without even like air conditioning or fan on.
Yeah.
Like I realized like being alone, because like, you know, when going to bed alone, I realized like, wow, that was something where I started to feel in myself like, man, I need noise, I need something. And I think it's that. For me personally, I know the idea, because I'm a twin.
Yeah.
So I grew up always around someone.
That's interesting.
You know? So I realized that even earlier growing up, like for me to like sit and be alone, and being alone in silence is a hard thing for me to do, because there's something about certain people where they grew up that way that just comes naturally for them. They're just used to that. They even find comfort in that. Mm-hmm. And for me, I realized like I don't. Like it's really hard for me. So sometimes when I am home alone, I'm like, man, like I just have to fill myself with time and things that I'm doing in order to just feel comfortable, which is kind of like a bigger conversation, because the question is like, why am I not comfortable just sitting within myself?
It's weird how we feel so uncomfortable with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like hanging out with ourselves, hanging out with our feelings, hanging out with then certain things start coming to like surface, and you're like, let me just distract myself with something else, right? Because then that means that you have to actually deal with whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through. Yeah. That's a big thing. I feel like that's part of the issue with social media. Yeah. That we're constantly distracting ourselves from the things that really matter, right? Because if we're going through something, we go to social media, and we look for affirmation in social media, and we want, whatever it is, we go to social media to distract for a source of affirmation, for a source of kind of like our fix. It's our fix for a moment. And I think that's kind of like, that's a little not scary, but it should concern us.
Well, I think the thing is that we don't realize how much that actually affects us, because that, to me, this is also like, that's the other side of this conversation about disconnecting from the noise, because I think there's a lot of noise on social media. Yep. And
that noise shapes you.
Yeah. Well, it also affects your day, affects your week. Like it literally comes when you're consuming, again, what type of content that you're consuming. Yep. Can actually cause something within you. So, you start to realize that the more you're consuming a type of thing or videos, or even if it's stuff that's just like has no value in a sense, because there's nothing that you're gaining from that, you start to realize how that could even affect you in a certain way. Right. And I think we don't realize that we find ourselves sometimes in a situations or in times where we're more irritable, more frustrated, more don't have grace, or can't have conversations with people because they seem to get more annoyed. And if we actually ask ourselves a question as to why, we might actually realize that it's because we're spending so much time in these things that we don't realize that how much they're affecting us. Yeah. And then it causes us to not perform at our best. because the reality is that our physical, our mental, spiritual health are connected. So when we're, connecting ourselves to these things, it causes us to respond in a certain way.
Yeah. And I think the lack of rest, takes us to where we burn out. Right? And when we burn out, we don't know how to get ourselves out of that place. Because sometimes we don't even know that we're burnt out, because we're constantly moving, we're constantly working, we're constantly in the move, right? And I think that's very dangerous, because if we don't know how to defeat it, kind of like put like the difference between when I'm okay or when I'm like in a healthy place and when I'm burned out. Like, we don't know the difference between those two. And sometimes we just don't know. But I think many of us are running constantly in burnout. We're running because we don't rest properly, and we don't disconnect properly. From like,
or we don't rest consistently either. That's true. The thing is that I think it's funny. Even the word burnout is funny to me, because it's like, if you realize, like us in our human nature, like we want to constantly keep moving and doing things. Usually because we're running away from our like internal like feelings and thoughts. But the thing is that eventually we will burn out. So it's like our body will eventually at some point tell us to stop and rest. If we don't get to a place where we're consistently making it a habit to disconnect, eventually our body's going to tell us to. Because we're going to have those anxiety attacks. We're going to have those moments where we can't, when we feel that internally. So it's like in us, we actually have to develop a self-control, discipline to acknowledge. And that's something that I've as I'm getting older, realizing that I think at a younger age, we think, I can do it all. I can be everywhere. I can be everything. I can do these things. And it's like, no, like now I'm at a point where I'm like, no, not even that I realize that I can't, I don't want to. Because I just feel like I'm at a point where I think as you get older, you start becoming more and more, you need more rest. You need more time to reflect, because I think also at a younger age, there's like this like ignorance to the world. There's just so much you don't know,
right?
But I think as you get older, you start seeing things differently, So the need to disconnect, the need to meditate, the need to kind of like take care of your mental space is so critical.
And I think that's one of the conversations that sometimes we don't have, right? I was listening to this guy, and he puts podcasts constantly on leadership, and he was talking about the four energies that every human being has. Four energies: the mental energy, the emotional energy, creative and mental, emotional energy, spiritual energy, and physical energy, right? And he talks about how when we burn out or when we are running on empty, it's not that we're running on empty on all four, is that we might be running empty on one. Right, that can be the creative or the mental one, or that can be the emotional one, or whatever it is, right? And he says you need to identify what replenishes each of any one of the energies, right? So I asked myself, I remember that helped me a lot last year. To actually evaluate what triggers my creativity, what replenishes my creativity, what replenishes my emotional energy, what replenishes my physical, and what replenishes my spiritual one, right? And I think we don't ask those questions many times because we don't know the answer to those questions many times. We actually have to dig into our own soul and say, okay, what do I enjoy? What do I like? What replenishes my energy in this and this and this and this area? And actually, I came to understand, for me, like in my creativity or my mental one, I need to go to new spaces. That's why I go a lot to coffee shops. I told my wife, hey, take me to new coffee shops. I like to go to museums. I like to go outdoors because that triggers my creativity. That cleans my mind. That cleans my heart because it's a new space. If I'm constantly going to the same space, I need to disconnect from that place. And that gives me rest. That brings peace. And I think that's an important thing to actually look into it.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Sometimes, like when I'm like writing a song or something, like I get writer's block or something, and what I always do is I'm okay with stopping and picking up somewhere else. So
Yeah.
if I'm at my home, I'll write to the point where I'm like, I don't have anything left. And then maybe I'll go, somewhere else, whether it's a coffee shop or whether, it's just another environment or even another room. Like it doesn't even have to be.
My counselor, she was telling me, okay, have you practiced meditation or prayer? Have you actually pray? I was like, yeah, I try to do that almost every day, or at least a certain amount of times during the week.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, I need you to try something different. I need you to sit down in silence for 5 minutes. Oh, heck no. That was so hard. Until this day, I'm trying to sit down in silence.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to be in silence. 5 minutes feels like an hour.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly surrounded by noise. Even when we're driving,
Yeah.
I put music. I don't allow myself to.
Yeah.
I always have like a noise in the back that that helps me walking through the day.
It's funny because those moments, for some reason, when we do sit in silence, not only does time slow down, but I feel like we also view that time as a waste of our time.
Yep.
And I think that we have been like conditioned, or we've been taught, or we've told ourselves like, oh, I have to maximize all the time that I have in the day. So maximizing that time means I need to be constantly plugged in.
Yep.
I need to be constantly posting. I need to be constantly learning. I need to be constantly talking to people, or even just doing things that give me life. And we use those types of phrases. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes we need to create space in our days to sit in silence.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny that we're talking about this and and it's hard for us to do,
Yeah.
So that's something that it's all good.
We have a new invite.
Yeah.
He's going to talk to us in the podcast.
Yeah. Chilling. So I think that's something that is tough for us to do. Like, is see the value in those times. And make that something that's a constantly part of our day. Whether, and for me, what I've actually done to what I've actually forced myself to do is that I have stopped trying to put myself in a way of creating the space, but finding the space. Like, even if it's at 5 minutes before I go to bed, and it's like, you know what, in this time, I'm just gonna like be quiet, or I'm gonna pray and do something to kind of like disconnect. Yeah. And I've tried to find those spaces anywhere I can.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one, because we, like you say, like when we stop, because we don't feel productive, and I feel like that has to do with many things, including insecurities, like not really feeling that those moments matter. Right? Because we're in this society where it's constantly telling us you need to hustle the whole day. You need to be, working 24/7, and we don't know how to like create those moments and those spaces. And I feel like it's the same for me. For me, I might not sit down in a space. I actually go for walks. Yeah. I actually, sometimes I go to another space and I sit down there in my car. Like, I try to have those spaces everywhere. Yeah. So that I can actually disconnect from it, Yeah. Because I think that it's a constant conversation, like, and we talk about this, like, the story of Jesus, he, even though he was like, he lived for 3 years, and those 3 years he was in the constantly moving. He was around people constantly. Yeah. But the Bible describes to us that he will find spaces by himself. How do you do that? Like, he will wake up in the morning super early. He will actually find a space to spend time with the Father, right? Yeah. That's what the Bible describes. Like, if you think about it, if the most important human being that exists in humanity, and he actually separates himself to spend time on his own and with God, right? Who do we think we are? Like, why do we think we're invincible? Yeah. To not actually understanding that that's actually part of our soul longs for, and what our soul needs, right? Yeah. During the day, or
when I think too, like, to be fair, like, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know.
Correct.
You know, so for a lot of us, it's just we weren't taught that. You know,
right.
We, you know, if you think about it from a generational perspective, like Gen X, like our parents are mostly Gen Xers, like their generation were the hustlers. They're the generation where they didn't have all the technology that we have. Like, I mean, think about it. Like the internet was, you know, when we were kids, basically. So, you know, they just had to hustle and grind and figure it out. And so for them, it's I'm sure they even, like, if we don't feel like we had time, like they probably really felt like they didn't have time to do those types of things. So for us not to really be raised or to actually implement that into our daily life, like that's where a lot of us, I think, we fall, like that's where our fault is. But I think as we have gotten older, we have to acknowledge that's why we probably don't do that, but now is the time to acknowledge how much we need that, the value in that again.
Well, I think that's something so interesting because, you know, you see, at least in Southern California, and I think around the world, you know, like being a Buddhist is like a huge thing right now, like being spiritual and meditation and yoga and all those things, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have found the value of having those moments, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's true. Like some of us, we never, like I was not aware of that. Like a long time, and I probably never care like 10 years ago about this, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, yes, you're right. You know, if we are in a place where we can acknowledge that, we should actually acknowledge it and put something in place so that we can practice disconnecting from the noise, right? Like I just went to last week. I was in the desert with some friends. They went camping and we went with another friend just for a day. And literally we were sitting down. We were the only ones in all those mountains. Yeah. And we were sitting down in the middle and it was quiet. We have no music. We have nothing. And it feels so weird. But it felt so weird. Like they were like, put music, put something like that makes like this awkwardness go away, you know? But the reality is that, man, I feel like we are in that place where we need to actually, this need to be a discipline in our lives that we need to add and to constantly remind ourselves that, like, if we feel overwhelmed and we feel constantly irritated, if we feel tired, if we don't feel like we are in our best place mentally and emotionally, I think that should be a sign. It's a good time to get away. Or find a silence place.
And I think too, you know, as you were talking about, you know, changing your, like, where you like sometimes needed like change sceneries and things like that, I think also when it comes to like disconnecting from the noise is a lot of times like when we are connected, right? When we're like having conversations or we're trying to share our perspective on life. A lot of times I think the reason why people are so blindsided to like other opinions or learning or being open is because of the fact that like I think that when you change your position, you can change your perspective. So like I see things a certain way when I'm sitting in my house and I might be, you know, negative or I might be like dealing with thoughts and things like that. But when I can take time to disconnect and maybe like go for a walk, that's actually something that I've been able to do more during COVID, especially. And I realized how valuable that was to me because I am able to walk outside and be grateful. I am able to walk outside and say, you know what, like this change in my, like where I'm at and my scenery has actually helped me to have a different perspective on what I'm going through right now. So I think the value of disconnecting is that we can actually allow ourselves to receive a new perspective, whether it's just what we're going through the day or even just to have that mental space to clear our minds and see things in a different way.
It totally brings clarity. And also another thing I think allows us when we are super busy in our minds is like they're so full of noise. I think we also don't allow ourselves to evaluate our lives and see what we're grateful for. I think part of us living in this place where we are healthy and in peace and in joy has to be connected to being grateful. right?
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
About the whole idea of being grateful and how that has weight in your life. And I think that's a huge thing, right? That when we actually disconnect, we have the opportunity to evaluate our lives. And gratefulness comes when we actually start evaluating our lives and start like identifying those things, and that brings more peace, that brings joy, that brings more contentment, you know, like clarity, gratefulness. All those things come with when we disconnect from like things and noise. Yeah
Totally, man. So, you know, as we you know, think about this idea of disconnecting, you know, I definitely think that one of the biggest things we can do is practice meditation, practice prayer, practice, you know, putting these things into action, because I think that we don't realize how much we're in constant need. It's like we're dehydrating ourselves, and where our body is in thirsty for just rest, thirsty for just the fact that even though we have access to technology and we have access to all these things and information, that sometimes it's the simplest things that we need to just disconnect. It sounds very simple, right? It sounds like literally like just unplug the cord from the wall, but sometimes that can be one of the most difficult things for us, because I think for a lot of us too, that our community is online. For all of us, you know, especially right now, like we want to stay engaged and stay connected to something. Like I've even realized, like me listening to a video or listening to a podcast, it's like these are like my new friends. You know what I'm saying? Like these are like, oh, okay, well, at least I'm not alone, right? I can listen to someone. But I think that it's true. Like I think the biggest thing that I can think of is like committing to learning ourselves, committing to being to not having that uncomfortable feeling, because that should be something that stands out to us. Like, why do we feel that way? What are some things that I need to unpack? I know for me that also comes to like why maybe I'm not as in touch with my emotions as I could be, because I don't allow myself to sit in them. You know?
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother podcast right there. How do we sit in our emotions? How do we deal with those, you know? Because we don't know how to deal with those. But anyways, I think that's true, you know. Hopefully we can put in practice, you know, we can evaluate our lives. We can understand that those spaces matter when we actually disconnect from everything, the busyness of life, the noise. And I think that, like you say, you know, put in practice those things, you know, write it down, you know, like be intentional. Like they're not going to happen by accident. They have to be on purpose. They have to be intentional, you know. And if you don't do it, I notice if I don't do it, you know, I need to be responsible for my own life. You know, so.
And I think the important part of this is, man, this just helps be a better person. This helps us treat the people we love better. You know, and I think those are the things that when we think about, okay, who's the type of person I want to be? I want to be someone that is in control of who I am. I'm not spiraling. I'm not burnt out, because when you're in that season and state of burnt out, like I'll be honest, I'm not a fun person to be around.
Oh, heck no,
like because I just don't have the energy. Because the reality is, even when you're, you know, for someone like me, I enjoy being around people. I do gain energy from that. But when I'm in a bad space because I haven't taken care of myself mentally, emotionally, like it's not. I'm also taking away something from the people I love because I'm not able to be my best version of myself.
You're not bringing your best version, and I think that the best gift you can give to people is be your best version, right? And I think that that's true. You know, wherever we go, I know myself. When I find myself irritated, when I don't want to be around people, I know that there's something behind it, and it's the lack of me resting. Many times that's a big, like the huge reason why I feel myself that way. And that's true. You know, I don't know if because I'm getting older, sometimes I'm like, am I getting older? That's why I'm getting grumpier. And that is because I'm, you know, and the reality is I can point back to resting and disconnecting from things. And like for me, you know, I try to fast social media once in a while, you know, because I think
that's
feel
something I've yet to do, and it's always in my head like
I should do that. That sounds great.
That has been for me.
And I think when I find myself constantly going to like defaulting to social media when I'm like watching TV and I'm going to social media and I'm like doing something and I go to social media while I'm driving and I feel the anxiety, like I want to go to social media, to me that's a sign to say, okay, you need to fast. You need to fast. You need to disconnect right now and just leave it away for a month. 2 weeks, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I went for like a month and a half without Instagram or something like that.
Wow.
And I feel so good. But I just went back, But I know myself. You're the only one who knows yourself, right? So at the end of the day, you need to put in practices those things.
Yeah. That's good, man. I like it.
I like it too.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to put it in practice. So
it is.
I'm not saying that. I mean, we're not saying it's easy. Yeah. So, anyways. Yeah.
No, definitely not easy, but I think the biggest thing to me, I've said like 4 biggest things, but but I think it's the self-awareness.
Yeah,
the key is being self-aware within yourself, to know your triggers, to know, and assess, and that goes back to just giving yourself the space to learn and figure that out. Yep. So because we don't do that is why we are not self-aware. Mm-hmm. So it's just daily practice, man. I think that people don't realize that to make yourself a better person and to help yourself grow is literally the mundane daily, what might seem like boring activities. Is that's what it is. That's literally where you find
all day,
the ability to grow.
Yeah, because our brain is constantly stimulated by things, right? When we wake up, where do we go first? Yeah. Maybe social media. Mm-hmm. That stimulates our brain. Mm-hmm. And imagine to keep that high the whole day. It's not an easy thing, right?
Yeah.
We need to start our it's like when we work out or we do something, and we go right away to work out without stretching, without preparing ourselves, we can hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think we need to, and that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to go that way. But anyways, all I'm saying is that, yes, self-awareness, be aware, be conscious about those things, don't dismiss them, actually tackle them.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's it for me.
I love it, man.
Yeah. No, that's it.
I think that kind of wraps that up. But man, really dope, really, really important. And yeah, man, let's keep it going, and let's learn ourselves.
Yeah, follow us, share this podcast with friends, and let us know. Give us some opinions, give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to hear us to talk about, and follow us on social media. I don't know if I said that again, but anyways.
Follow us anyway. But thank you for tuning in. Yep. We will catch you next time.
All right, let's go.
Wait, please get up out your feelings. It's a long way up. I got no time